Continuing on with the series, and hello and welcome to all of you. In the last video, we took a look at Ambari and what it means for DevOps of a Hadoop cluster. How can you manage? We got a nice little overview of where everything is and what you can do with it, so to speak, right? Today we're going to look at another Ambari installation. This one is specifically for what in typical Hortonworks instances is called HDF, or Hadoop data flow components. Now, typically, you don't mix them. The previous video we saw all of the integral parts such as HDFS, yarn, HBase, pig, hive, scoop, and so on and so forth, right? But that's all about managing the data, storing the data, and accessing the data. So, you can think of all of those services as a, constellation of services that help you manage the data in a database, essentially. And there are a variety of different use cases for Hadoop and how you manage the data and so on and so forth. And we, like I said, we're going to get into those details of those particular services and the use cases at a later point. But, you're going to need some tools to get data or put data into the Hadoop cluster as well, right? And, those typical interactions have to happen in terms of what typically or traditionally is referred to as ETL, extract, transform, and load. And that's something that you can do, or in this particular instance, ELT, or extract, load, and transform is more like it, because you're making use of parallelism, you're making use of clustered instances of services. So let's take a look at what this Ambari server looks like for HDF. As usual, I'm gonna log in as admin. And the interface is exactly the same. You see the dashboard, you see the name of the cluster, you see the services, you see the hosts, you see the alerts, you see the admin options, you see if there are any specific views, and then obviously setting up about managing Ambari's and managing Ambari settings. So as you can imagine, you see here that these services are obviously a smaller set of services, but they are obviously, again, purpose built for moving data. It's not data at rest, it's moving data. You're moving data from point A to point B, and typically you're going to need some of these things. There are two, maybe three components that are most important here. You will see Ambari infrastructure and Ambari metrics. Obviously, there is a large amount of infrastructure that is needed to monitor each and every service on each and every node and make sure that these services are running appropriately. Storm is one key component, and let's take a look at what these services are supposed to do. Essentially, so you have Storm, Zookeeper, Ambari infrastructure. So again, within each service there are components to each of the service. So for example, let's take a look at NiFi. There is a NiFi certificate authority and then NiFi service itself. In terms of Kafka, there is a Kafka broker service that you can use typically to move transactions, almost like an enterprise service bus architecture. It's hyper-threaded, it's highly scalable, and very, very useful for streaming analytics or real-time analytics and ingesting data at a transaction level, so to speak. So let's just take a look at the stack and the versions. As you can see, Storm is basically the stream processing framework that is part of the Apache Hadoop ecosystem. Kafka is high throughput distributed messaging system. NiFi, this is, believe it or not, it came out of NSA, and NSA put it out there as an open source project, and it has been gaining slowly but steadily adoption, and people are liking it more and more, and it's a very, very powerful, reliable system to process and distribute the data. So think ETL, you can think NiFi. And then obviously the registry, which is a specific component to Hortonworks, and these two are basically Hortonworks specific. There are other vendors like Cloudera and Mapper who implement the same thing. There is Greenplum. There is a variety of these different vendors. IBM has its own implementation. Microsoft has its own implementation. We prefer Hortonworks partly because they have been in this business the longest, along with I want to say Cloudera. Their processes are fairly mature, and they do a decent job in terms of supporting the infrastructure should you need to get the support. But all of these products are open source, and they don't necessarily cost you anything. So as usual, I'm going to go back to the dashboard, and I'm going to start all of the services. Again, confirming the start, and we will pick up the thread after these services come up, and we will talk about each of the individual services and maybe even get into a demo of NiFi here pretty soon. So stay tuned. Thanks for visiting. Bye-bye.